Good morning and welcome to the Sport for Business Daily. We're joined this morning by Rob McEvoy, Head of Market Management at Allianz, to chat about some of the challenges and also the excitement of getting the Allianz football and hurling leagues back onto our pitches and our screens over the last couple of weeks. Good morning, Rob.
Morning, Rob. How are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you as well, and good to see the brand back in action. The last couple of weekends have been especially uplifting in terms of getting the action back onto the pitches. How challenging has it been over the course of the last couple of months? The Allianz Leagues would have been scheduled to kick off as normal in February, and we would have been through and acclaimed our winners already at this stage. But obviously, things didn't quite work out as planned. How difficult was that?
Well, we framed a lot of our planning. We obviously, every marketing function, every worth their salt would frame their planning out the year beforehand. So by the end of 2020, we were somewhat optimistic that we were going to have the leagues as normal and as normally scheduled for 2021. So we proceeded on that basis, and then of course everything went to pot there early January. We had the lockdown, as we know, nationally again. So what did we do? Well, we already had assets in produced from last year in terms of a lot of our brand advertising that we had for the leagues, and it was really successful in terms of improving brand affinity and all of those sort of measures that we look at. So we figured we'd reuse them anyway. So that was already done. There was no additional production required in terms of above the line advertising, TV advertising. But yeah, it was a tough one. We weren't actually sure whether we were going to, as the months went on and January sort of passed and then February, and we were talking obviously continuously with our colleagues in the GAA. And there was two options really. The first one was, are the leagues postponed? And it looked like they were indeed postponed, or would they be entirely cancelled, which was kind of the nuclear option. So we had to plan for both of those scenarios, and we produced some alternative VOs and alternative assets just for both of those particular scenarios, just so that we could hedge our bets as to what was going to happen, because we really didn't know. So that was quite difficult. As kind of March moved along and we heard a little bit more about reopening and numbers started to come down, we felt more and more confident that the leagues would indeed take place, albeit in a more truncated format. Now, I don't think that's anyone's preference. I don't think it's the GAA's preference. Certainly it wouldn't be our preference either. But I mean, these are kind of exceptional times and we have to roll with the punches on that. And so we had to obviously work with Tenio. We had to work in the company of Huskies. We worked with our media partners in Mediacom as well, just to work through what that overall sort of laydown and path would look like around activating the leagues. Then, once we were relatively sure that it would start. So we've built on that, and we produced some additional assets, just such as radio, and we also produced. We also have a special affinity offer for customers as well, for GA supporters. We decided to promote that as well, where we obviously give exclusive discounts to GA supporters, but we'll also provide donations to their clubs as well when they purchase a policy off us. We kind of felt they were important elements to get into the mix there as well.
That's a good campaign. You've got there's 5,000 for each province as well, one club in each province, which is going out, and that's which is excellent. Had you learned from last year so that the business of collaborating in remote fashion was a little bit more comfortable this year?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think we were all thrown in at the deep end in the middle of March last year. Remote working was new. Now, we were really, really quick. A credit to our IT guys and everyone who worked on that side of the house in Allianz to get us up and running and working remotely really, really quickly. And the team were just incredible over the first number of weeks, because we'd not just COVID measures to deal with and all of the customer supports associated with that, but we'd also the leagues and the idea of finishing out the leagues as well, or postponing the leagues, had to be dealt with, and there was a range of other things we had to do. So it wasn't our preferred decision, I suppose, to postpone the leagues, but we knew it was the right thing to do. Ultimately, we knew that was going to happen. So for them to be played later on in the year was great, to get a level of finality around the 2020 league season was great. Did we change much this year? I mean, there was, the challenges of working remotely is for everyone, not just ourselves. I think that collaboration between ourselves and the GA is really strong anyway. So we'd have regular contact with them. We have had co-planning meetings with them as well. Just the regular stuff that you do at any decent sponsorship partnership you would undertake. So, that helped us as we went along. But I wouldn't say there was a dramatic. I think we were already wounded from last year anyway, but we were already well used to managing things when this season came around.
You were like carrying an injury but playing through the pain, I
guess. Right. Yeah, rolling with the punches, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, hopefully 2022 will be a little bit different. The challenge of postponing, obviously from a sporting point of view, and the team in the GAA would have been looking at a number of different scenarios around that, but you would have been putting out the We Cover Coverage campaign in terms of radio and TV, and you're planning for that kind of scenario. How far in advance do you have to be booking those advertising, or is the world of media become much more flexible now in the modern era as well?
It depends on the media type. So there is a level of flexibility as what we can do in terms of switching out certain ad formats and whatnot. So we had a range of different assets that we could have used, whether they were GAA related, whether they were core brands, whether they were related to our core branding, whether they direct response, whether they were a whole host of different things. So we can certainly switch out specific media types. So that wasn't really an issue. In terms of buying ahead, it's generally about a 6 to 8 week period that you have to pre-book these things. That's what we would do. So we were okay. We were in good time for this year in order to plan appropriately for that. And even when we had planned some of the it happened early enough, that third lockdown, actually, funny enough, that we were able to make provision relatively quickly as to what we were going to do in Q1, certainly, and into the first part of Q2 as well. So that wasn't a huge problem for us, Rob, thankfully.
And we've no fans in the grounds as yet. Possibly by the end of the truncated period, we might be able to get some in there. But it was important to push the pictures out to as many people as possible, and obviously with so many games going on, 16 matches across the leagues on Sunday, GAA Go, which was in place there for last year, was an important facet here again. So every game is being broadcast out on the streaming service. You came on board as supporters of that again.
We did, yeah. No, we were sponsors of that last year in any case, and pre-pandemic. We're a global brand, so we know that reach is important, not just in Ireland but also globally, and it's important for Gaelic games to be promoted, and the Allianz brand to be promoted globally. So there was a nice consistency around that. When you think about it, like, sponsorship is essentially about two things from a branding perspective. It's about generating reach and it's about generating affinity. Gaelic Games is obviously has enormous affinity and from the Irish public in general, and not just the sporting public, but the Irish public in general. Anyone who plays at underage level all the way up. But so there's that aspect, but the reach aspect was something that we were struggling with, obviously. The leagues is the lifeblood of the leagues in many respects, and the GAA would tell you this themselves, is attendance, is match attendance. Now there is broadcast, obviously, and it was very well broadcast last year. I think we had something in the region of about 45 games that were televised last year. But this year, between terrestrial TV broadcasts and GAA Go, that's upwards of 99 games that will be actually televised now and available for people to view. And I think it's a really interesting, if you look at the attendances in the leagues for 2019, It was something in the region of about 700,000 customers, or 700,000 people. So in that respect, how do you replace that reach? How do you replace that reach? It's a really difficult challenge. And it's something that we felt that working with the GAA on, the expansion of the leagues via GAA Go as well, in terms of viewership and so on, feels like a really interesting approach for us. Feels like it's going to get us the necessary reach. Hopefully that we're missing out in terms of just the general activations that we would see and exposure that we would like our brand to have at match days themselves. But it's just a really interesting business model anyway. That streaming model is something that we see in all forms of entertainment now, and I think it's a really interesting model for the GA to look at into the future. Albeit it was on an expat basis, now it's domestic. You'd wonder, will that persist again? That's their decision, but I do think it's quite interesting. So we're happy that the level of games GAA Go are supportive of that. It's converged quite nicely, for better or worse, as part of a pandemic response on our side. It's converged quite nicely in order for us to actually gain some of the reach that we would have missed as part of our sponsorship.
There will be changes. Who can tell what the future is going to look like when we emerge from this? But that certainly does definitely feel as though there will be a hybrid of people who want to be able to see everything all the time in exactly the way they want, but also to maintain.
You can't beat a match experience. Anyone who's been to a game, whether it's the leagues, whether it's the championship, whatever it is, you can't beat that experience. You can't. And it is where we live on a small island. Games are really accessible to people. Okay, it might be a couple of hours down the road, but ultimately, if there's alternatives for viewership, if there's alternatives for people to watch it in a more and access it in a more in an easier way as well, in an even easier way, that's great. That's great for everyone.
It is. It's great to watch the matches, but it does feel like a pain in your heart looking at all of those empty seats and thinking that you wish that you were there. One of the other areas where, unfortunately, we haven't been able to bring it back this year is one of my favourite partnerships, the Coming to Munsko. I've been fortunate enough to have kids that have gotten to play in Croke Park as a result of that. But obviously, for the last couple of years, that's just not been on the agenda. Is there a hope that that's going to be brought back again next year?
Well, we don't know what's going to happen later on this year, obviously. I mean, we're just hoping that the summer we'll see it through and there'll be case numbers will remain down and people will be vaccinated and there will be a sense of normality that will return in the coming months. And I think we're hopeful around that, but who's to know? But we're also really, really hopeful that Coming to Munsko will return. It's been a really strong part of what we do in this market from a sponsorship perspective. Always has been. It's second only to the leagues in terms of the tenure of the sponsorship that we have there. I think we're 28 years. The leagues is 29 years. 28 years we've been supporting Coming to Munsko. We've a significant footprint in Irish education as well, and partnership there as insurance provider of a lot of educational institutions around Ireland. So it's really important in that regard. And of course, it's a great competition as well. And it's brilliant. It supports underage sports, underage Gaelic games. We're really proud of it, always have been. So if we can get that off the ground, we will do everything that we can.
So we have got some of our action back. We are hopeful that we'll get more of our action back. Thanks to Allianz for playing a part in that and for making it work so well. And thanks to you, Rob, for taking the time out to be with us this morning.
My pleasure, Rob. Thanks a lot.